evening, everyone. Welcome to the October 5th Town Council meeting, Town of Los Gatos, and also Parking Authority and Redevelopment Agency. And before we move to roll call, I'd like to ask everyone in attendance to please turn your phones off or to vibrate, something that doesn't make any noise and disturb the proceedings, and speakers. Now I'll turn to Ms. Jackie Rose to call the roll.
Councilmember Steve Rice.
Here.
Councilmember Barbara Spector. Here. Councilmember Joe Pazinski.
Here.
Vice Mayor Diane McNutt. Here. Mayor and Chair Mike Westerman.
Here. Thank you very much, Mrs. Rose. Joining us, first of all, I want to mention, will the members of Troop 539 please raise your hand? Right back there. We have Troop 539 in attendance tonight to watch our democracy in action and how this town council works, interacts with the community, and makes wonderful things happen in the town of Los Gatos. Joining us tonight for the Pledge of Allegiance are the Youth Park Citizens of the Year. We have Jacob Jolly, Grace Peterson, Molly Messiers, Lauren Jean Rice, and I understand Uba Dimbo is not able to attend tonight. Is that correct? All right. So I'd like to ask the four of you to please meet me at the podium. Good evening, good evening. There we go. That working? That works. All right. These four students from the Los Gatos community received commendations at the Los Gatos Youth Park Day held September 26th for their contributions to their schools, community, and specifically to the youth park. In addition to their being honored on Youth Park Day, they will participate in the town's holiday tree lighting ceremony and children's holiday parade. This year they have an extra honor, and that's leading the Pledge of Allegiance at this town council meeting. So now we're going to ask Jacob, Grace, Molly, and Lauren to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll all please stand. And let me hand this over to you. Why don't you start us off?
Okay.
All right. Let's start with that pledge and we'll do it.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's hear it for our youth citizens. And do I have cups for this or just pins? I have cups for this too? Boy, you've gone all out. All right. We've got 4 Los Gatos Town of Los Gatos mugs to give each of you, and there's some goodies inside. Enjoy that there. And I haven't missed anything, have I, Jackie? All right, we've got all that. Let's have one more round of applause for our Youth Citizens of the Year. And if you'll please all shake hands with our council. Thank you. Okay, excuse me just one second here as I mixed up my own notes. I certainly did. All right. Jackie, you had it right as usual. I screwed up. Now I'd like to invite Harley Kroc to join me up here. Come on, Harley. Hi, Steve and Mike back there. And Janet, thank you very much. Hi, Harley. Nice to see you. Good to see you. It brings me great pleasure, little sadness, to present this commendation to Harley on behalf of the town of Los Gatos. Harley has touched the lives of many, many, many Los Gatons in his 30 years of service with Los Gatos Saratoga Recreation, and that includes Los Gatons from kids to adults. As he retires, he's leaving very big shoes to fill, and he's taking with him the sincere gratitude of the town of Los Gatos for his partnership with the town and service to the community. Harley, we have a commendation here that's signed by the entire town council that I'd like to read here, and of course this is for you to take home. It's a commendation dated today. Whereas Harley Kroc has been a respected recreation supervisor and employee for the Los Gatos Saratoga Recreation since September 1979. And after 30 years of service to the organization and the community, has announced his retirement. And whereas Harley exemplifies Los Gatos Saratoga Recreation's vision of building a healthy community through enrichment, innovation, and fun. And whereas Harley has provided quality programs to the Los Gatos community, including sports and recreation classes and programs for all ages, senior programs, adult education programs, and special events, including walking in the Los Gatos Saratoga Recreation entry in the annual Los Gatos Children's Christmas Holiday Parade, each of his 30 years, as well as conducting countless sports leagues and tournaments. Lady right up here is crying, Harley. Whereas Harley has an easygoing manner that has been effective in bringing people together, and the skills and commitment that have made him a highly regarded professional in the recreation field. And whereas Harley has offered valuable service to the Los Gatos community for 30 years and has contributed to the high quality of life in Los Gatos. Now, therefore, the Town Council of the Town of Los Gatos does hereby render with special appreciation a commendation to Harley Kroc for his many years of dedication and exemplary community service. And Harley, that's as good as we could do in words on an 8.5 by 11. But I want to thank you personally for all these years that you've given, the years that we've interacted, being my friend, my mentor, many different things, and I've seen you interact, especially with children, and what you've brought to this community. If we had more people like Harley Kroc, we'd be better than we are even. Thank you very much.
Very much. I'm humbled, and I accept this on behalf of our agency. I thank Steve Roloff, our director, Janet Sumter, and Mike Loya for being alongside me tonight. And once again, I enjoyed the passion and the ability to work in this community, and I will not be a stranger. I promise you'll all see me again. But I once again thank each and every one of you and each and every one of the members here of the council for this wonderful award. And thank you again.
Thank you. And seriously, for anyone who hasn't had the pleasure of knowing Harley before, this is a truly wonderful, salt of the earth. This is as good as it comes right here. This man is an absolutely special human being for kids and adults, and has given his heart and soul for 30 years to this town. And please shake our hands of our council members. Thank you. I put my page 3 before my page 2, and that's what's screwing me up. Now I'd like to invite Nick Johnson and Sergeant Carrie Harris to join me here. Sergeant, let's see. There you go. Hi, Nick. Welcome. Hi. Good to see you. Meeting after meeting, this council is so fortunate to have the opportunity to honor Los Gatos youth who excel in about everything imaginable and are great examples of community-minded, can-do attitude. Nick represents a stellar example of that kind of achievement. He's here tonight in celebration of attaining his Eagle Scout rank by completing a project for the town of Los Gatos. By this commendation, the town wants to acknowledge his hard work and show its appreciation for the service he provided to the CERT program. Now I go back to page 2 from page 3, and I'm almost caught up. Nick, we have a commendation for you that's also signed to each of the members of the town council for you to take home this evening. Whereas, Nick Johnson is a resident of Los Gatos and a student at Bellarmine High School, has participated in many of the Town of Los Gatos CERT exercises as a volunteer with his dad, Buzz Johnson. Where are you, Dad? Right there. Let's give Buzz a hand. You raised a fine young man. Yep. And also I don't think I introduced Sergeant Kerry Harris here of our Los Gatos Police Department. Whereas Nick completed all the requirements for his Eagle rank as a Boy Scout, whereby for his Eagle project he fulfilled a need within the CERT program for additional backboards, demonstrating how through his actions he continues to put his community first. And whereas for Nick's Eagle Scout project he designed and built 12 backboards and had the foresight to stain them CERT green and affix the Los Gatos Montessorino CERT logo to the boards. Whereas several of the backboards were used at the West CERT 2009 CERT exercises on Saturday, September 19th, 2009, CERT being Community Emergency Response Team. Thank you. For anyone that doesn't know that, CERT is Community Emergency Response Team. At the September 19th, 2009, the Los Gatos High School Mass Casualty Triage and Patient Transport Scenario. The important word there is scenario. We were practicing. Whereas, most notably, Nick has donated these backboards to the CERT program, thus fostering a critical partnership between government and community volunteerism. Now, therefore, the Town Council of the Town of Los Gatos does hereby render with special appreciation a commendation to Nick Johnson for his dedication and exemplary community service. Thank you, Nick.
So I just want to say a few quick words real fast. I want to say thank you to my troop who helped me out immensely on this project. My parents who, stay up with me late at night planning the project and taking me to the store to buy the materials and things like that, as well as Sergeant Harris and the rest of the Community Emergency Response Team for letting me have this project. And thank you.
Thank you. Let's hear it again for Nick. And Nick, while Sergeant Harris holds that, why don't you shake the hands of our council members? Don't go anywhere. Thank you, Nick. Thank you. Go ahead and have a seat. Thank you. I'm going to let Sergeant Harris just say a minute or two about the CERT program, and then you want to share, and then I've got something I want to present to you.
Thank you. Well, I'm so appreciative of Nick's hard work to make this happen. The Johnson family has been just outstanding, but they are just one family of over 300 people who have been through our CERT, Community Emergency Response Team training here in Los Gatos. And that sort of partnership is just going to be so important after a disaster. And so certainly thank you to the Johnsons, thank you to Nick, and anyone who's ever interested in learning more about emergency response and emergency preparedness, our CERT team is here to provide that service to you. So thank you.
Thank you. And Sergeant Harris? Absolutely. The recognition of Nick's contributions to the CERT program is fitting, given that tonight we are proclaiming October as Los Gatos Prepared Month. The CERT volunteers are trained to provide critical services in the event of an emergency, and they would do it well if needed, since they devote so much time and energy to training and preparing for emergency response. The town staff also devotes a significant effort to emergency preparedness, and Los Gatos Prepared Month is all about encouraging you, the community, to be prepared as well. This 20th anniversary of the Loma Prieta earthquake is a meaningful time to take the steps needed to be prepared. As you know, the town of Los Gatos was seriously affected by that earthquake in 1989. Fortunately, the town and community came together to respond quickly and effectively. We want to continue to build that capacity to respond, and we need all of you to help. Being prepared and joining CERT are the best ways for you to do that. And Sergeant Harris, we now have a proclamation that I'll read to you as well. Whereas October 17th is the 20th anniversary of the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake, which caused serious damage to the Los Gatos homes and businesses, even though it was not as strong as the major earthquake predicted for this region sometime in the future. And whereas potential contagious health diseases, such as the pandemic flu could have significant impacts on families, schools, businesses, and hospitals. And whereas in the event of these other disasters, local governments will do their best to provide vital assistance to ensure the health and safety of the community at large, but may not have the breadth and depth of resources to help everyone immediately. And whereas it is important for residents and businesses to be prepared to be self-sufficient for a period of at least 72 hours in the event of an earthquake, and a period of between 2 and 4 weeks in the event of pandemic flu. And whereas the town would like to encourage every resident and business in Los Gatos to have the awareness, skills, and resources necessary to be self-sufficient in the event of an earthquake or possible flu pandemic. Now, therefore, be it resolved, I, Mike Wasserman, by the virtue of the authority vested in me as the mayor of the town of Los Gatos, do deem it appropriate and do hereby proclaim the month of October 2009 as Los Gatos Prepared Month within our town, and ask our residents and businesses to take advantage of information provided at council meetings and at local shopping center kiosks on October 17th, and the town's website, losgatosprepared.org, to take steps to be self-sufficient in the event of a natural or health disaster. Thank you, Sergeant Harris. Okay, I believe that brings us to our closed session report. If memory serves me right, so I'll turn to Mr. Korb, our town attorney, for that report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, members of the public. The town council met in closed session tonight with its real property negotiators concerning 3 separate properties. The first 2, 123 and 208 East Main Street, were the subject of negotiations with the Los Gatos-Saratoga Community Education and Recreation District. The third property is 17 Fiesta Way, which is right across the street from the Civic Center and located squarely in the path of the upcoming library project. Council gave direction to its negotiators concerning these properties. No final actions were taken. No final reportable actions were taken, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Korb. I appreciate that. We're going to now move on to council and town manager reports. And I'd just like to use this opportunity to remind anyone, if you wish to speak about any item on tonight's agenda, or not on tonight's agenda, to please fill out one of these cards and submit it to the clerk over here on my left. Also, I'd like to mention at this time that there were, regarding agenda items number 3 and 4, that there were little one-page desk items that were available. Yeah. Desk items as well on 3 and 4. And now I'll go to council matters, and I'll look to my council for anything that matters at the moment. No, we'll pass on that. That didn't come out right, but you know what I mean. All right, manager matters. Mr. Larson.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, staff would like to report on 5 items. First, our boards and commissions application process is continuing. This Friday is the published deadline for residents of Los Gatos to apply for many of our boards and commissions, most of which have vacancies to be appointed by the council later this year. And more information on each commission and the application forms can be found on the town's website. And we are always encouraging more and strong applicants for council consideration for all boards and commissions. Second, last Friday I had the good fortune of attending Screen on the Green. Actually, I guess it was maybe 2 Fridays ago. Screen on the Green for the first time with my 2 children, and what a fantastic event. 350 people of the community enjoying Tales of Despero, events and services provided by the Recreation Department and Fisher School. And kudos to our Community Services Department for its continuing efforts to provide that. And also to the Billy Jones Railroad, which was a co-sponsor and provided merry-go-round and train rides, as well as refreshments for the families attending. Third, I'd like to highlight that this last Saturday, we had 120 homes participating in our annual garage sale program, to be followed this coming Saturday by Second Chance Day, where residents are encouraged to drop off at the neighborhood center on Saturday, October 10th, from 9 to 3 p.m., a variety of goods to be used by families in need over the winter months. The items will be donated to 7 nonprofits, and what they're asking for is warm outerwear for men, women, and children, blankets and towels, ladies' professional attire, eyeglasses, sunglasses, and new toiletries, all to service those in need in the broader Los Gatos community. I also wanted to pay particular thanks to the sponsors of garage sales, as well as the residents we invited to town to partake of them, for our delayed slurry seal project that occurred on Blossom Hill Road in the Boulevard and parts of Winchester University over this last weekend as well. As the council may recall, our semi-annual slurry seal project was delayed due to weather, and to finish the project up before the weather further turned, we scheduled daytime work over this weekend, which did cause some traffic obstacles, but we appreciate the patience and indulgence of our community and the good work of the Los Gatos Police Department to provide extra traffic control during that project. We will not have to do another slurry seal project for 2 years, and we will be targeting the scheduling of those more in the August months so that the work can be done at night when we have enough warm weather to ensure that the slurry cures by morning when rush hour starts. Last item I wanted to highlight for the council is another significant retirement from our community. The council has had the good fortune of working with Deputy Town Manager Bud Lortz, some of you for maybe nearly 25 years as he served the town. And as we talked about at our last meeting, it was his leadership that brought forward the sports field project for your unanimous approval. His career over 25 years has been equally strong, going back to the earthquake we'll be celebrating 20 years ago. It was his leadership that brought redevelopment to our community, which provided the infrastructure and improvement funding needed for the restoration of downtown into what I believe is the 6th year in a row it's been voted the best downtown of Silicon Valley. Bud has also been the primary staff driver in developing a number of development standards for our residential, commercial, and hillsides development under council direction. Last, he's played a key leadership role in the town organization, supervising not only the community development department, but also embodying fiscal responsibility in his stewardship of that department and his support for other departments throughout the town. And while Bud is on a well-deserved vacation today, I did not ask him to come. He knew we were going to be announcing his retirement from the town as of Friday, October 16th. And I just wanted to share that. Great news for him, a sad loss for us, but much appreciation for all that he's done for the town of Los Gatos. And there'll be other opportunities to feat and recognize him in the months ahead.
Thank you, Manager Larson. Now it's time to deal with our consent items, and I'll look to my council first for any consent items that they wish to pull. Seeing none, I'll look to the public, and I have a card from Citizen Ray on item number 5. So you may speak. You can speak right now. The minutes.
Thank you. Normally your minutes come up.
Don't. When you start talking, the time's going to start. So time starts now.
You gotta keep people abreast of what's going on. Right? Yes, as you know, in the past, I have taken quite a bit of umbrage at the basic nonsense of the minutes, okay? And they have, in recent meetings, they have stood corrected nicely. And I'm a little disappointed that I have to go at Ms. Rose again, just like before. I'm disappointed. But maybe I'll hold it up a little bit, okay? Because I think she's trying, and that is wonderful, okay? But the issue that I want to bring up, is the fact that the minutes state that I said that Mr. Larson misrepresented the facts about the county's passive use policy, and that was the reason the community lost the property to the county. That's a statement that makes no sense whatsoever, okay? What I did say, I remember very clearly that I took objection to Lortz's and Larson's comment about the fact that the kids of Los Gatos would now have continued use of the Vasona property, the 13.5 acres, as they had before. The whole idea of the town buying that 13.5 acres, or not buying, the town utilizing 13.5 acres, was there was 8.5 acres buildable for a sports facility and arena, okay, which was totally contrary, Mr. Larson, to the passive use policy of the county for Vasona Park. They don't allow kids to play sports there, and they will not allow Los Gatos kids to play sports in the future unless they change their policy. And you have to understand that, Mr. Larson. Bud Lortz, the news of Bud Lortz leaving, I cannot believe it. But I don't want to get into that because that's not on the minutes. I'll celebrate in a minute. I may take a year off to celebrate, but I'll excuse myself now, okay, before I get warned again. Thank you.
Thank you, Citizen Ray. That concludes the public portion of the consent items, and I'll look to council for a discussion or a motion. Councilmember Brzezinski.
I assume the year off is in the minutes tonight. I'd like to move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to approve consent items 1 through 5. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Passes unanimously. Now we get, Citizen Ray, don't sit down yet. We're going to make it easy on you. Verbal communications, and we'll start with Citizen Ray.
Oh, I love to get up and down. So easy. Yes, first subject, the naming of the mountain. I got into that last meeting, and I thought about it some more, and I've got a name that reflects the natural beauty of the mountain, reflects what we see every morning when the sun comes up behind the mountain, okay? So why not call the mountain Monte del Sol? Why not? It starts our day, every day. Sun comes peeking up behind the mountain. So that's my offering. Let's all think about it, because we don't want to leave it unnamed, because it's like Mount Orphan. Nobody cares. That's the message by not naming that we send. So let's work on it. Number 2. Mr. Wasserman.
Yes, sir.
May I have your attention, please? Mr. Wasserman, I continue to be so terribly disappointed in the way you cut people off at the podium, okay? When their time is up, you cut them off in mid-word, mid-sentence, or in mid-thought. It is such an obnoxious trait on your part, personally, okay? So I want to give you a warning. Are you ready? In the future, every time you cut people off, I am going to pledge $100 to the election of a real, decent human being to the town council of Los Gatos to replace you. $100 each time, as long as I approve of their candidacy. Okay? Last, North 40. We've got Mr. Larson and Lortz. Goodbye, Lortz. at the General Plan Advisory Committee meeting, or the General Plan meeting this past week, they stood up there, these employees, and said, what we're going to do in the North 40, we're going to build 750 new single-family residences. That's 7,500 car trips per day in the Los Gatos. We're going to build a series of 4-story high-rises all around the 40 acres. Unbelievable. We're going to do a 5-story hotel. That's the employee setting policy for Los Gatos. And not a word about the will of the people. Not a word. And I am outraged. Thank you.
Thank you. Good. Okay. Next, under verbal, we have Eric Reichwein. Did I pronounce your last name right, Eric?
Yeah.
Super.
That was really good. Okay. So recently, I read the Los Gatos Weekly, and they're building a sports complex, and I think that's really cool. And I think the kids of Los Gatos need a place like that. But also, I don't think any like soccer or basketball players have been coming to town council meetings for the last like 7 or 8 years, trying to get some place to play like soccer or whatever. And me and my friends have been doing that for like the last 8 years, trying to get a skate park. And in the article, it said that there was extra room at the sports complex, and I was thinking that we could maybe get at least like a couple thousand square feet. We could build a small skate park for the kids of Los Gatos. I know that like you don't think there's a lot of kids that like skateboard or rollerblade, but there are like a lot of kids that do that, and I think it would be really good for the town of Los Gatos to have that. And I was like having some ideas. We can like make an educational program about it, because there's like a lot of physics involved with skateboarding. We can make like a little class about skating, like not just like learning how to skate, but like learning the physics behind it, and learning how to like build ramps. Like I've been building ramps for like probably the last 10 years. I'm like really good with cement, wood, metal. I'm learning how to weld right now. So, and I will like fund the whole skate park. Like I basically funded the whole skate park in my backyard, and it took like 2 years to get all the money. So like all I need is some space, and I could build a really good skate park for the kids. And yeah, I just want you to know that. But the skaters still need a place to skate. Like, oh yeah, and also in the newspaper, they're like, oh yeah, we have to go to San Jose to practice. But it's like, well, we have to do that too. Like we have to like go out in town like around like 1 in the morning just to skate some spots so we don't get hassled. And I've been trying to, or somebody tried to run me over with a car, and like one of LG's finest threatened me the other day for coming down the hill too fast, I guess, trying to make it to school on time. I mean, that's not related to the skate park, but like I just get hassled like all the time just for skating in town. And there's nowhere really just good to skate in town. So if you build a skate park, kids will go there and they won't have to bother with the crappy skate parks around town. I mean the skate spots around town. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Okay, and that's it on the cards. Verbal communications, we have one more? Is that what I'm hearing? Is this under verbal? Yes? Sir, why don't you come back up and give your name for the record? So, Ron Ronan?
Yes, sir.
Is that correct? Thank you. If you'll please give your name and address for the record.
Yes. Ron Ronan, 121 Vista del Lago in Los Gatos.
Thank you. Go right ahead.
First, it's an honor and a privilege to be in front of the respected City Council members and Mayor Wasserman. Attorney Ori Korb. I've applied for a business license in the town of Los Gatos at 101 Church Street, number 19. And I've been experiencing rather difficult challenges with the process of approval. My profession is chiropractic, and it has been classified under medical. And I'm in a quandary here because there is apparently an issue of parking that may present a problem. In my particular case, it does not.
You can speak into the microphone, please. Thank you.
You may personally agree that at this rather challenging economic times, you have either know or seen many spaces here in the town of Los Gatos that many businesses that have had to fold because of challenges that they're experiencing. And I think that the town should welcome new business under these circumstances and not make it more challenging for them. I believe that also rules and regulations should be interpreted and applied and enforced to all in the same manner. Certainly not in a selective and discriminatory manner that may create a conflict of interest. The mere fact that chiropractic is not medical by definition, for example, it appears that the town of Los Gatos views and classifies the fields of psychiatry, psychotherapy, and PhD in psychology, a doctorate in psychology, not as medical. Yet chiropractic is viewed and classified as medical.
Thank you very much. And it's Dr. Ronan?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time.
So there has been a...
I'm sorry, it's 3 minutes allowed per person.
Okay.
As far as that goes, I'm sure town staff has your information. We also have your information here.
I appreciate it.
Also,
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. And also, I was going to look to our Director of Community Development, Wendy Rooney, if you had some information you could share.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, staff did meet with Dr. Ronan about a week and a half ago and discussed the concerns. Unfortunately, I believe he has leased a tenant space and it has insufficient parking for the classification use that he is. We have historically, most jurisdictions I've worked for, if not all, have classified chiropractic care as a medical use because we look at in parking, in determining parking ratios, we look at similar characteristics, and we view a chiropractic office where you have clients coming. Generally, clients are coming on a regular schedule. You usually have at least one chiropractic practitioner as well as some office staff. And so the parking requirements are very similar to medical office, and that's how we calculate them. Dr. Ronan's situation is that for medical use, you're required to have one space per 250 square feet or 6 spaces per doctor, whichever is most restrictive. And in this case, he would be required to provide 6 spaces, and he cannot provide 6 spaces.
Thank you. And a question, if I may. We have the same classification for chiropractors throughout town, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And we explain...
Doesn't matter who the individual is or where
Absolutely.
the location is. Chiropractor is classified that way, and all other chiropractors abide by similar conditions.
As long as they come in and they get their business license and process through us, yes.
Got it. Thank you. Council, any questions? None. Thank you very much, Ms. Rooney. Okay, that will conclude the verbal communications. We'll now move on to other business, and Mr. Greg Larson, our town manager, is going to give the staff report. Mr. Larson, take it away.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we have before you tonight an urgency ordinance establishing a temporary moratorium on the establishment and operation of medical marijuana dispensaries in the town of Los Gatos. This action is necessitated by recent federal rulings as well as numerous requests the town of Los Gatos and other jurisdictions have received regarding the potential opening of medical marijuana dispensaries. While we believe our current regulations do not allow for the operation of a medical marijuana dispensary in town, there is additional court information as well as best practices throughout the municipal environment that your staff would seek the time to explore and address before consideration of any medical marijuana dispensary applications, permits, or otherwise for the town of Los Gatos. We are bringing this urgency ordinance to be adopted by resolution tonight to the council as an ordinance to start the process. We will then come back. This action requires 4 votes as an urgency ordinance to become effective immediately. We will come back to council within 45 days for a longer-term moratorium that would be noticed in the normal process because staff's workload on planning and development is full with other ordinance changes such as the grading ordinance, general plan update, and the like, as well as the course of normal business. We don't believe we'll get to developing a set of regulations pertaining to medical marijuana dispensaries till early next fiscal year. And that concludes staff report. You do have a full report in front of you, as well as the ordinance that the council would have to enter into tonight.
It'll sound better if you turn it on. Any questions of Mr. Larson? Seeing none, I will open, and we don't have any cards, and I will close the public hearing portion of item number 6, and I'll look to council for discussion and direction. Councilmember Brzezinski.
I will make a motion to adopt the proposed interim urgency ordinance, placing a moratorium on the establishment and operation of medical marijuana dispensaries in order to provide the town with time to determine whether to adopt an ordinance regulating the location or operation of medical marijuana dispensaries.
Second. We have a motion made, a motion seconded. I'll look for council discussion. I see and recognize Councilmember Spector.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to be supporting the motion, but just for staff input mainly and for my fellow council people. When this comes back before us, I will be looking to information as to what the League of California Cities might be doing, what other jurisdictions might be doing, and I'll be looking for this information for 2 reasons. One, as the staff report said, if staff is fully booked right now, and in order to work on this, they'd have to take themselves off some other project. So in order to address staff time, and in order for us, the town, to deal with this issue hopefully sooner than 1 to 1.5 years. I'd be especially interested in the League of California Cities input, something that would be applicable to all jurisdictions.
Thank you. Councilmember Brzezinski.
I would be very interested in the staff's response through the research, specifically because I see this as a land use issue and subject to the local jurisdiction. So although cognizant, as recommended by Councilwoman Spector, of the League of Cities positions, the 480 cities of California, a very diverse set of agencies. And I think that we should drive this primarily by our local community's interests and the values of the local community. And so I look forward to the time wherein we can thoroughly vet this. But I would recommend strongly that we look at this as an opportunity for us to make a decision relative to this proposal that relates to this community with the values of this community and the issues of impacts in this community as our primary consideration.
Thank you. I'll be supporting the motion as well, and Mr. Brzezinski, I think, put it very, very well as far as our community. Also important to me is the recent U.S. Supreme Court ruling that dealt with this topic as well. So I'll be very interested to see what the League of California Cities has to say and what our staff research and all from other cities brings back to us at some point. But first and foremost, as Mr. Pruszynski said, is the community. Seeing no other discussion, I'll call for the question on the motion that we have before us. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. That carries unanimously. And we now move to item number 7. And item number 7, we're going to bring Wendy Rooney back up, our Director of Community Development.
Thank you.
Good night, youth citizens. No doubt they're going home to study.
Do they turn it on, or do I? They do, okay.
And do the other wonderful things that youth citizens do. All right, we are now on to agenda item number 7, and as I said, Community Development Director, Mrs. Wendy Rooney, is going to give the staff report. Take it away.
Great. Good evening, Mayor Wasserman and council members. Over the past several months, staff has been working with the General Plan Committee, the Community Services Commission, and the Planning Commission on revisions to the town's below-market price affordable housing program. This has actually been prompted by 2 development projects that the council saw over the last probably about 7 months, the Bay Tree Condominium Conversion Project and the Meadows Continuum Care study session item that you saw, I believe, in February. We're first going to review the modifications recommended by each of the reviewing bodies and then address how these changes have been accomplished. Starting with the council recommended changes. The first one is to provide an exception to the eligibility requirements for special circumstances senior households residing in apartments that are converted to condominiums. Again, that was prompted by the Bay Tree Condominium Project. Number 2, allow for flexibility in phasing of BMP requirements for certain applications that are processed as planned developments. Number 3, allow for BMP units to be provided off-site if authorized by the town council. And then, of course, as always, clean up existing language when we have that opportunity to review existing ordinances. During their review, the General Plan Committee also recommended changes to the BMP program. The first one was to include a new provision that required owners to occupy their BMP unit rather than renting it. The second was to prohibit the owner-occupied BMP unit recipients from upgrading to a larger or a newer BMP unit. 3 was to eliminate the in-fee lieu option for smaller residential projects of 5 to 9 units. And that would be in what I'd call the flatlands, non-hillside parts of the community. And then also to eliminate the in lieu fee option for projects that are 5 units or greater within the hillside residential zone districts. Moving to the Community Services Commission, overall the Community Services Commission agreed with the recommended changes with the exception to 1. The Commission did not support the exception to the first-time homebuyer definition based on fairness concerns. However, recognizing the uniqueness of the condominium conversion process, the Commission recommended modifying the current definition so the recipient could be considered a first-time home buyer if he or she has not owned a home in the 9 Bay Area counties in the past 2 years, rather than the current requirements of 3 years. The Planning Commission also generally agreed with the GPC that smaller developments should build the BMP unit rather than paying an in lieu fee. However, the Planning Commission recommended one exception, which is to provide the BMP unit on site in the hillside residential zone projects unless it's demonstrated to be infeasible. If the applicant cannot demonstrate, or can demonstrate, that on-site is infeasible, the Planning Commission then recommended that the unit be provided off-site, down in the flatter portions of the community. And finally, if the off-site option was determined to be infeasible, as evidenced by the information submitted by the applicant, then the applicant would be allowed to pay the in lieu fee. So the Planning Commission wants to step through this process rather than automatically grant a off-site construction. So trying to kind of grasp all these changes, and I really want to focus on the 5 substantive changes that were recommended. I put together a chart here to walk us through that. Your first column shows the reviewing body decision, or direction, excuse me. The middle column is the existing guidelines, and then the column to the right is the proposed language that's in the draft ordinance, and guidelines that's in your packet. So I'll quickly walk through these. In terms of the first one, exception to the eligibility requirements to purchase a BMP for special circumstances seniors residing in condominium conversion projects. In our existing guidelines, there's no exceptions right now for that. What is proposed? Provide the exception, and staff recommended expanding that to include all tenants in a condominium conversion project, regardless of age. Reason for that recommendation is that our existing guidelines do not, well, they may give greater points in the rating scale to seniors. The guidelines address all types of households, not just senior households, and so staff thought it would be appropriate to open that up to all households, and that's an item that the council can discuss on this. The second one is the exception to the first-time homebuyer definition to allow special circumstances senior to qualify to purchase a BMP. Again, the exception would be just to the definition, and that definition is that they cannot be a homeowner within the last 3 years. They would still have to meet all income qualification requirements. In the existing guidelines, first-time homebuyer definition requires that a recipient not be on a residential title in the Bay Area within the past 3 years. This provision would grant an exception to that requirement. And the proposed is to provide the exception and expand to all tenants in a condominium conversion project, again, regardless of age. The third item, flexibility and phasing requirements for when a BMP unit is established and sold in a condominium conversion project. And just to remind the council where this came about was there was the concern that when these units would convert from apartments to condominiums, there would be displaced tenants. So the flexibility and phasing was to allow tenants to stay in their units until such time they vacate, and then those units could then become a BMP. Current regulations require that the BMP be established concurrently with the market rate units at the beginning of the project. So what's proposed is allow for phasing of the BMP unit in a condominium conversion project that is processed as a planned development. The BMP unit would be sold once it's vacated by the existing tenant. Staff is recommending that that take place only through the planned development process, because then the council would have the ability to determine when that phasing should occur on a case-by-case basis. In terms of the last 2 items, eliminate, probably the biggest items, eliminate the in lieu fee option for smaller residential projects of 5 to 9 units. That is the direction. The existing guidelines, they allow for either the BMP to be constructed or an in lieu fee to be paid. What's proposed is to eliminate the in lieu fee and require the BMP unit be constructed on the site. And the genesis for that, as well as the next items, really that the below market price program, the basic goal of that is to integrate market rate and affordable housing into the same development. And so when we're allowing those units to be an in lieu fee be paid, then those units are not being integrated into that. And the last one is eliminate the in lieu fee option for projects within Hillside Residential Zone District. Why this one's treated a little bit differently is because staff believes, we're not absolutely quite sure, but we believe that historically the reason why it was the existing guidelines actually require the in lieu fee be paid for Hillside Residential is because the town's overall goal of keeping the density rather low in the hillside is probably the genesis of that. So how the guidelines are written now is you're required to pay the in lieu fee. You don't have the option of providing the unit. As I indicated, the General Plan Committee had recommended that the fee, that an off-site construction provision be allowed for hillside development. And the Planning Commission agreed with that to a certain point, but instead they also recommended that it should be constructed on-site. And then if that can't be achieved, then it could be constructed off-site. And if that can't be achieved, then an in lieu fee be paid. In order to assist the town council's discussion and help to really establish a benchmark, subsequent to the General Plan Committee meeting and prior to the Plan Commission meeting, staff researched other jurisdictions affordable housing provisions relative to the General Plan Committee recommendations of eliminating in lieu fees and allowing off-site construction of the BMP unit. Staff researched 8 surrounding Bay Area jurisdictions, and as well as reviewed a recently prepared report entitled Inclusionary Housing in California, 30 Years of Innovation. In this research, staff found that all of the 8 Bay Area jurisdictions allowed in lieu fees in place of constructing the BMP unit. 5 of the 8 jurisdictions allowed off-site construction to meet the affordable housing requirements. In the statewide report, 81% of the 107 surveyed jurisdictions allowed in lieu fees. 67% allowed off-site construction, but generally the off-site construction was only allowed if it showed that there was a better community benefit that would be achieved. In other words, more units or more bedrooms would be achieved. In addition to understanding how other California cities are administering their programs, another factor to consider when determining whether to eliminate the in lieu fee option is evaluating the effectiveness of the in lieu fee. Some data: since 1993, the BMP fee fund has generated approximately $1.8 million. The fund has been used to buy units that are potentially going to lose their affordability and to keep them in the program, as well as administrative costs, including the contract with our housing authority, who actually does program qualifications, applicant qualifications, and monitoring. At the end of 07-08, the fund had a balance of $1.4 million, and that doesn't mean we've only spent $400,000. Money comes in and out of the fund. Throughout the last 16 years, money has come in and out of the fund. While the fund has not been used to actually build or acquire new affordable units, the recently approved Affordable Housing Strategies identifies both existing and new programs for the in lieu fee and the RDA fund, so I think that that is on the horizon. The report also suggests that BMP funds, along with the RDA funds, could be leveraged to achieve a greater number of affordable units. And lastly, 2 additional factors to consider when determining whether to eliminate the in lieu fee option are: 1, how would the town respond to the case where a developer could not find an appropriately priced unit to buy? And 2, would the conversion of a market rate unit in an existing multifamily development to an affordable unit raise neighborhood opposition? And in this latter case, would the town need to determine if the surrounding tenants and owners should be notified in advance of the purchase? Factors to consider. In summary, in lieu fee programs are very common, especially with smaller residential developments. While most jurisdictions prefer to integrate affordable housing and market rate units, off-site construction is often allowed if it can be demonstrated that greater community benefits can be achieved with the off-site alternative. However, it's important to consider how the off-site unit is integrated into the different neighborhoods, especially if you're integrating it into an existing market rate neighborhood. The attached guidelines and ordinance reflect all the council direction and the GPC and the Planning Commission and staff recommended changes. However, as I mentioned, the guidelines do not include the Community Services Commission recommended change to the first-time home buyer definition. If the council agrees with the Community Services Commission, that change can be made between the introduction of the ordinance and also the final adoption, which would be next month. Based on the overall intent of the town's BMP program to integrate the affordable units with the market rate units, staff recommends the town council approve the recommended modifications to the BMP program, including significantly reducing the in lieu fee options and allowing for off-site construction when on-site is not feasible for Hillside Residential. And with that, I can answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Mrs. Rooney. So Troop 539, what do you think? Pretty exciting stuff? What we're talking about here is below market price housing, affordable housing. What Los Gatos and other communities do is they receive monies from the state, and they always look for opportunities where they can create affordable housing in their community in an area that makes sense to allow other people that might have perhaps lesser income available to them to purchase, to be able to own and occupy a home in our community. and enjoy the other benefits of our community as far as the schools, the libraries, the parks, etc. So that's part of what Los Gatos does as a town. You might not have been aware of that. I saw all of you writing feverishly, taking notes, and I appreciate that. And if you have any questions afterwards, I'm sure your troop leader can answer those for you. Okay, Council. Any questions? Mr. Rice, Councilmember Rice.
I have two questions. One may be a little more difficult to answer than the other. First of all, the Planning Commission, without trying to ask you to divine their thinking, it's a pretty significant change that they're recommending on the in lieu fee. What was the discussion behind that at the time?
Well, I can tell you first off, we've spent considerable time. We probably spent about an hour at least on this item alone, maybe even a little bit longer. I think the Planning Commission felt that you can integrate a BMP into the hillside, into a hillside development. You can build a smaller unit that would not be too out of place with that. I think their biggest concern, and I think that's where the potential infeasibility clause came in, was that if you think about the hillside development, subdivisions tend to have larger lots, larger homes, more expensive homes, and it may be economically infeasible to be able to develop a BMP within the hillsides. So my sense is that the commission felt that it could be achieved, and that it should be achieved since that's the goal of the program, and then added the clause to allow that to be constructed off-site if it is determined to be infeasible, and if that's determined to be infeasible, which would unlikely be so, an in lieu fee could be paid.
Thank you. Please continue.
Thanks. The other question, forgive my lack of memory on geography, is Santa Cruz County one of the 9 Bay Area counties by this definition? It is not. So if somebody moves from Santa Cruz County and they owned a home over there within the last 3 years, they would still qualify as a first-time home buyer in Los Gatos.
If it's been at least 3 years since they owned a home, yes, in Santa Cruz County.
I'm sorry, he was saying if Santa Cruz County is not included in the 3-year limit.
Oh, I'm sorry,
would
you're
not
right.
apply.
You're absolutely right, yes.
Okay, and I'll have a problem with that, but I'll go on from there. Thanks.
Thank you, Vice Mayor McNutt.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I really appreciate having the matrix because I think this is such a great example of how our committees and commissions add value to the process. And I could tell from the abbreviated notes that it was a very thoughtful discussion at each level. And I think you even went back a couple of times to general plan and so on. And having all of that extra input, I think, really makes what we have to consider more thought through from the whole community's point of view, and I think that's a good thing. I also am questioning what Councilmember Rice was kind of trying to get at, because the reality of a hillside development of more than 5 units, being able to actually figure out how to incorporate an affordable, a BMP unit, I just I can't envision how that could ever happen. So I'm just wondering if they want to give the opportunity, but they don't really think that it's ever going to happen, or just if you have any additional background on what they were thinking, since we don't have a transcript on that. And then my second part of that is also more background on what the Community Services Commission was thinking as to why 2 years would be fair, but 3 years is not. Mm-hmm. I mean, was that just an arbitrary number, but both of those, just more behind the scenes thinking?
If I can answer the Community Service Commission, because I think that's a pretty clear-cut answer, whereas the other one is really more trying to reflect back on our conversation with the Planning Commission and really see if I could understand and communicate what their thoughts were. The Community Service Commission, they had a very big concern with fairness. I think they felt that given the fact that other potential recipients of below market price homes are rated on a scale, have to meet the qualification, first off the definition, rated on a scale, that it's really not fair to allow, even though there's a unique situation with the condominium conversion, allow a tenant in a condominium conversion to be able jump up to the front of the line. But I think that if it wasn't for the uniqueness of the condominium conversion and the fact that we don't have too many condominium conversions, they probably wouldn't have even supported the change. But because I think they really truly felt there was a fairness issue. But I think they felt that given the fact this is a unique situation, these folks are potentially being displaced when of no doing of their own, that there should be some type of concession for that. And 1 year wasn't spoken of. It was just the 2 years was the only number that they came up with, and they all agreed to that, I believe. Planning Commission. I think the Planning Commission feels that you can build a unit in the hillside, that it is feasible to be able to put a BMP unit in the hillside. I think they realize there's challenges to it, especially from an economic standpoint, but I think they felt that if you're building a 5-lot subdivision, maybe you have one smaller lot, meet the zoning requirements and be able to build a unit there. So I think they felt that is feasible. It would be challenging, and we would have to develop some criteria to really guide how an applicant would demonstrate infeasibility. And I'm sure I'm sure it would just be based on economics. The Planning Commission felt that if it's too dense, then reduce one of the market rate units and provide one BMP and in the case of a 5-lot subdivision, 4 market rate and 1 BMP.
Thank you, Councilmember Rice.
I want to go back to my
Is it Santa Cruz included?
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm looking at page 5
yes,
of the ordinance.
yes.
Your presentation confused me, and I thought I had read it one way, and then you presented it differently.
Yes, sorry about that. Should I clarify that for the record? Yeah. The Santa Cruz counties as well as Monterey County, is that AMBAG?
And San Benito.
And San Benito County are also included in the 9 Bay Area counties.
Well, not part of the 9 Bay Area counties.
Well, they're included.
12 counties that they're listing.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, I think we're good on questions of council, of staff, and now we'll open it up to the public, and I don't have any cards, so we'll close the public portion, and I'll now look to council for discussion. I'm going to open it up with a question, if I may, for you, Mrs. Rooney. If you go back about 6 pages there onto your spreadsheet, it's the second spreadsheet that has 2 rows. There you go. Thank you very much. And I'm looking in the far right column under proposed. Bottom right, require the construction of the BMP on site unless the applicant demonstrates that on site is infeasible. I'm a very literal person, and so how infeasibility is demonstrated, I'm interested in how that is determined. But also I'm looking at, I look at that bottom right under proposed, and that seems to me to be reasonable. Was that same solution discussed on the row above it regarding projects of 5 to 9, smaller residential projects of 5 to 9 units? Why the double standard?
I think that in terms of the Planning Commission's review of this, they were looking at a somewhat, if I'd say, a tiered process for hillside residential, because it's hillside residential. As I stated, the overall intent is to keep the densities low there, so I think there's some sensitivity to that. However, I think they felt strongly that you should be able to demonstrate why a BMP could not be constructed there. And so then they offered, if that can't be accomplished, then somewhere else in town the unit should be constructed. And they felt very firm with that. And why that wasn't discussed with the other one, I think because it was, I'm going to guess, it was fairly unanimous through all the reviewing bodies that they were comfortable with eliminating the in lieu fee options for non-hillside development, that the BMP should be constructed on site. There's really no justification as to why you can't construct it on site. With the General Plan Committee, we talked about, at first the General Plan Committee suggested that staff come up with some criteria for determining when to allow it on site and when to allow it off site. And staff came back to the committee and indicated that it's really difficult to find criteria that's going to differentiate those situations. Frankly, if the property's too small to accommodate the BMP unit, then why not reduce it one market rate unit so you accommodate the BMP unit? So the Planning Commission never had any discussion in terms of phasing it or tiering it with non-hillside residential development.
Thank you. I find what you write in the bottom right corner, like I said, to be reasonable. Require the construction of the BMP on site unless the applicant demonstrates that the on site is infeasible. And it seems to me earlier in your presentation you mentioned infeasible, perhaps economically infeasible, as one of the possibilities of infeasibility.
Correct.
If that's a word. I sometimes make up words, so I apologize. That's not a word. And then, if the applicant can demonstrate that on-site is infeasible, then the BMP is to be constructed off-site. I like those solutions. I like what's said there. I also tend to like what's said there applying to residential projects of 5 to 9 units, that if possible, they should construct a BMP on-site. But if they can prove it's economically unfeasible, they should build one somewhere else. And if off-site is proven as infeasible, then in lieu fee is an option. I guess I'm really torn as to why. It seems to me either it's a good solution that should apply to both, or I don't quite. Can you shed any more light on that for me?
Well, I can tell you that the General Plan Committee looked at, and again, the General Plan Committee, it's really important for the council to understand, General Plan Committee did not have as much information as the Council and Plan Commission have had. Staff was able to do a lot of research following, based on the General Plan Committee's recommendations. We did research based upon that. However, we did bring to the General Plan Committee the concept of off-site construction. Off-site construction right now, the guidelines are recommending that, the draft guidelines for just continuum care facilities, and that's what the General Plan Committee came up with just that. When we talked about off-site construction, there was concerns about how would you integrate that into existing neighborhoods. Is it just relieving the developer from providing that unit on site? Is it really achieving the overall goal of the below market price program? So I think that's why the General Plan Committee and Planning Commission felt that if there isn't a constraint, a perceived constraint, or a perceived inconsistency with town policy that could be created by incorporating a unit in the hillside area, that could be perceived inconsistent with our goals of reducing the density in the hillside areas, then don't provide options.
Okay.
Meet the goals of the program.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember Spector.
Thank you. I can only share with the council what I heard and what my thinking was on the General Plan Committee. And first of all, it's a great committee of people, and it did give a lot of thought to this issue. It was brought before us, and we did give it thought. And to put it in perspective, what we were discussing is that with our BMPs, one, we want units, not especially more money into our funding. And we wanted these units to be throughout the town, not in any one location. And so as a result, it was our recommendation that we eliminate for the 5 to 9 the in lieu fee. We knew that there was $1.4 million in the in lieu fee fund. We knew that the in lieu fee fund had not at that juncture constructed any below market price units. And so, I mean, maybe Councilmember Brzezinski remembers something differently, but I don't recall that the General Plan Committee was at odds on this issue. That being said, the staff has now come up with new information as to why we might need an in lieu fee in order to have this fund of money. As I sit here tonight, I just think from the information I have that having the units, not the in lieu fee, is still something that I support. The Planning Commission supported it. All the other committees and commissions supported it. And maybe as a side note, if there is some concern by staff that we need funding for something, maybe we need to have more detail and analyze that issue more discreetly. But for the goals of the town to have BMPs and to have them integrated, that's why you got your recommendation from the GPC. And I actually remember an example that we had. We were saying, okay, so you have the developer develop it off-site. The developer has a hard time finding a small unit. He or she finds a small unit out on Blossom Hill. So there's one below market price unit out on Blossom Hill, isolated, or maybe they find 3 there and they're all isolated rather than having them integrated. And so that was what the kind of thinking that went into our recommendation.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Przinski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the other member of the General Plan Committee, I agree with Councilwoman Spector. The General Plan Committee has been doing yeoman's work in the recent months in relationship to this, the housing element, and a variety of other things that we're dealing with now. But the consensus was, as Councilwoman Spector indicated, that it is to our benefit to actually produce the units, and that the in lieu fee is in effect a fallback position at very best. It's not something that we equate with actual production of units. And so in general terms, I think that would be the guidance to council from the General Plan Committee, that we try at all costs to produce the actual units rather than to generate the fee. But the fee, I think, is stated in the guidelines proposed on page 2, the revised guidelines. It is available so long as it's understood within the language that it's a last resort issue rather than the primary. It's not take your choice, in lieu fee or build a unit. And that I think was the primary direction of the General Plan Committee. In terms of eliminating all in lieu fees, I don't think that was an explicit recommendation. I think that was, it's considered obvious that in some cases you have to have some flexibility. There's got to be some way to deal with an irresolvable conflict, and that's the purpose of the in lieu fee. And so long as the language is understood that way, then I think I can certainly accept the language as it's presented by staff.
Councilmember Spector.
Yeah, I would need clarification on page 2. Is this consistent with the recommendation from General Plan and Planning Commission, or is it inconsistent?
It's consistent with it's consistent with the General Plan Committee in terms of 5 to 9 units in the non-hillside residential areas, and it's been modified based on the Planning Commission's input of, if you want to call it that, phased approach to hillside development.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to express my comments here. The BMP program exists to provide below market priced housing, affordable housing in Los Gatos, and the rules are being constantly modified and changed. We get all kind of good input from all kind of good people, council members that sit on the committee, as well as community representatives that sit on it as well. I look at this presentation and I understand how much work, and I want to thank council members Przinski and Spector for all the hours and hours and meetings that they've put on above and beyond their half a dozen other committees that they're on. This has taken a great deal of work to come to this stage. And I also want to thank Wendy Rooney, our Director of Community Development, and for all the work and time she's put in the staff report and presentation. What I'm having trouble with is I hear from my fellow council members, and I agree entirely, that the goal here is to create BMPs throughout our community, that those BMPs be located in a variety of areas and mix in well with the neighborhoods. Our goal is not to collect fees, collect money, to look for other alternatives down the road. Our goal is to create BMPs. That's why the fee is called in lieu of. Okay, it's not the priority, it's in lieu of. because of that, and I go back to that page there, I look at that bottom right corner, and I think the rule to require the construction of BMPs on site is certainly my first choice. Mr. Brzezinski mentioned a few minutes ago, he said you must have some flexibility for certain areas that perhaps cannot, for whatever reason, have a BMP on there, and then you've got the in lieu fee, et cetera. The way that's written there, Mrs. Rooney, the first option is require the construction of the BMP on site unless the applicant demonstrates that on site is feasible. If infeasible, then the BMP is to be constructed off site. So there, option 1 is build a BMP. Option 2 is if you can't build one there, builds one somewhere else in town. So again, options 1 and 2, sentences 1 and 2, result in the creation of a BMP, which is certainly my goal and I believe council's goal. If an off-site option is infeasible, then an in lieu fee option is available. So the third alternative is, okay, pay us a fee, we'll put it into the pot, and we'll use that money somewhere down the road to create BMPs because that's the goal and the purpose of the program. I think that's a wonderful rule. I don't see why that rule doesn't apply to whatever projects, hillside, non-hillside, smaller residential, 5 to 9, whatever. I think what you've done here is wonderful. I agree with everything that's there, but I think that bottom right paragraph should apply to be the guiding light for all developments as far as BMP, because it seems right to me. Council, further discussion, motion.
You need to add the public hearing.
I did. We had questions of staff, then I looked for public hearing, there wasn't any, I closed public hearing, then I've got council questions.
My apology.
All
missed
right.
that.
I've got this together. It's happening. All right. So that's where we're at. And I'll look to council for discussion, for a motion to start a further discussion.
Any motion, I just want to recommend, Mr. Mayor, that motions be directed to the recommendation at the top of the staff report.
Thank you. And thank you very, very, very much for a very explicit staff report, because sometimes your mayor gets lost. I appreciate that. All right. I'd like to direct the clerk to read the title of the proposed ordinance.
An ordinance of the Town of Los Gatos amending Town Code Chapter 29, Division 6, Sections 29.10.3000 through 29.10.3040 Housing Assistance Program.
Thank you very much. Now we need a motion and a vote to waive the reading of the text.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Carries unanimously. Step number 5 also requires a motion. It's a motion to introduce the ordinance, which is attachment 2.
And let me also remind council, if any changes are recommended to the ordinance as introduced, those changes have to be articulated now so we can incorporate them into the final version.
Okay. I'll look for a motion to introduce the ordinance and any changes if anyone so wishes. Okay, I will make a motion to make a change, and that change would be, and I apologize, I don't know where in the ordinance it is. I know what I want to do, but I don't know where it is. So if I can get some help from staff on the proper verbiage to do this as cleanly as possible, Mr. Korb. What I would like is to have the second rule applied to the first row as well.
Attachment 1, I think, wait. Attachment 1, page 2. Okay.
We're talking page 2.
You want to expand it to all 5 to 9?
So I need to make a motion to introduce the ordinance, but I need to also propose that change for council discussion in a second.
So that would be a motion to introduce the ordinance with that change?
Yes, sir.
And the change would be made?
And, Mr. Mayor, I just want to confirm, is it for non-hillside residential 5 to 9 unit subdivisions, or is it for all subdivisions? I wasn't sure.
All subdivisions. I think it's a good rule that should apply to both. And we say all, we're talking about the smaller residential projects of 5 to 9 units, correct?
Well, all subdivisions would be any size. We were dealing with just the smaller. The General Plan Committee had recommended just on the smaller subdivisions.
Okay, then may I ask this, please? What is our current rule regarding subdivisions larger than 9 units?
They must provide the unit on site.
Okay, so I'm fine with leaving that. So that would be unchanged. So my change would be to apply the current rule proposed for hillside residential to also apply to smaller residential projects of 5 to 9 units.
And I can second.
Mr. Corp?
And I can second that.
Thank you. We have a motion made and a motion seconded. Any further discussion? Councilmember Przynski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On page 3 of our document, Exhibit A, there is a strikeout of the residential developments with 5 to 9 units, and a strikeout of the planned development projects within an underlying HR zoning designation. With those 2 items struck, would not the mayor's recommendation already be applicable to the language in the document?
It's actually in Section D, which is right above that. It clarifies that this option of providing the off-site unit or paying the fee is specific to the HR, the hillside residential. So we would expand this to say hillside residential subdivisions as well as subdivisions of 5 to 9 units.
I see.
In non-hillside areas.
So we're re-including that basically?
We've included back into Section D.
Gotcha.
Thank you, Vice Mayor McNutt.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't think I'm going to be able to support this because I understand the rationale for wanting it to be consistent and appearance of fair across the board, but as it was just pointed out in the discussion, this is only talking about 5 to 9 and not the larger. So there's already an inconsistency of fairness across the board. So that's one thing. Secondly, as I said earlier, I'm very worried about the practicality of enforcing this special consideration for hillside development anyway. As you said, what's the definition of infeasible? I think it's going to be a headache of great magnitude as this comes forward in real development, real applications. And thirdly, we've spent a fairly small amount of time on this tonight, plus our own individual preparation time of reading through this, but I know that all of the other committees, General Plan and Planning Commission in particular, have really thought about this and studied it, and if they are comfortable with it, I feel like I need to be respectful of that process. So for all of those reasons, I don't think this one's going to work for me.
Okay, I appreciate that. And to address the issue you raised as far as fairness, the current laws, regulations, ordinances that we have that apply to larger subdivisions, we're not changing that. So I consider that fair advance notice. We're not changing the rules on anyone. The fact this is before us here is a change to our current ordinances, our current rules. I just thought any change should be fair and consistent across the board. And so that's the reason I proposed that bottom right requirement applies to both. I think if you change something, the change should be fair. And the fact we're not changing the other one doesn't bother me, but I certainly respect and understand what you said. Councilmember Spector.
Thank you. I won't be able to support the motion either for the same reason that I previously articulated as to the thinking that went into my work on the general plan, for the same reasons that the Vice Mayor has articulated. Our whole goal, my whole goal as part of that general plan committee, was to get units, below market price units, integrated throughout in the developments throughout the town. Human nature being what it is, any development will say, we'd rather give money than give you a unit. I mean, that is the practicality. My sense of why the Planning Commission gave a potential free pass to Hillside is because of the complexity of developing units in the Hillside and the challenge with the density in the Hillside. But I am also going to, if we get to that point, I would be much more comfortable supporting a motion where the recommendations on the that are up on the wall right now are part of that motion.
Understood, thank you. And I would comment back, you made a sentence in there, you spoke just a moment ago and talked about the hillsides and a free pass. And the requiring the construction of the BMP on site, if the hillside can't do that, their second requirement would be to provide a BMP somewhere else in town. So I think the way it's written is very well written. And again, I thank the members of the various organizations that have brought it forward. I look at this whole document, I look at everything that has been done here, and I see a change to one sentence, the proposed area. And the change that I'm proposing, as I'm trying to lobby for my motion here, the change that I'm proposing is simply to take the wording that you crafted and brought forward to us as appropriate for the hillsides and say, I really like what you wrote. And I think it should apply to both scenarios. So that's what I've got to say. Question?
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. President.
Mr. Mayor, to Councilwoman Spector's position, we're not talking about large developments beyond 9 because that's already accommodated. We're not now doing anything other than focusing on the 5 to 9 units, which is kind of a mid-range low for development. And the only change we're looking at is that they would be required to build BMP units on site. I think the consistency of the language for the hillside, the position you've taken in your motion is sensible, but I do think that there's some value, and perhaps this is the discussion we should have that parallels the Planning Commission's discussion. Why would we, of necessity, grant in lieu fee for these mid-size to smaller developments, 5 to 9, when theoretically there shouldn't be any obstruction to their providing an affordable unit within the size of their property? So I see where the Planning Commission is going. Maybe that's the discussion we need to have before we draw a conclusion on this motion.
Okay, if you could take that a step further for me, that discussion. Do you want to open that discussion, please?
Well, I'll make a statement, and the statement is that I appreciate the intensity with which the Planning Commission made this recommendation to us, on the basis that we all are agreed we do want the actual production of below-market housing, and there will be opportunities presented us by developers in the 5 to 9 range to provide housing, and if we say there is no alternative, you're going to build affordability into your development, then that closes the book on the need to look elsewhere, or the need to, in effect, justify how unfeasible it would be to build in a 5 to 9. I guess I'm trying to imagine how it would be unfeasible to build in a 5 to 9 unit development. What would be a reason for that? And I don't see that. Nothing presents itself easily at this point. So my inclination as part of this discussion would be to maintain the Planning Commission's recommendation, and to move forward with the language that accommodates this elimination of the in lieu fee for the 5 to 9.
Councilmember Rice.
Well, I'll lobby for my second if I can for a second. I think if everything was always black and white, we probably wouldn't need much time at a planning commission or town council. The problem is there's a lot of shades of gray. I cannot, sitting here right now, think of a 5 to 9 unit subdivision in the flatlands, we'll call it, that could find building a BMP infeasible. However, things will come up. And I just, my thinking in seconding the mayor's motion is that I'd like to leave that gray area for a planning commission or a future council to find a situation, if they find themselves in that situation, to say, you know what, I'd rather you build a BMP unit elsewhere than here, for whatever reason that may be. I think the language on the bottom right square there that says unless applicant can demonstrate the on-site option is infeasible is a pretty clear direction to future planning commissions to say, you know what, guys, you got to really justify why you're not going to allow this. And that's why I liked the language. I think it's a reasonable solution, and I certainly appreciate the General Plan Committee's efforts and the Planning Commission's efforts. Our job here is to kind of look at it and say, okay, what could come forward down the road? They did that, and they came up with this, and I think it's reasonable, but you don't know what you don't know, and something could come up down the road that I think an off-site might be better than an on-site, so I don't think it would hurt to include that in the language.
Thank you. And what I like about it is if they prove it's infeasible to have it there, then they're required to build a BMP somewhere else in town, and you still end up with a BMP. Councilman Brzezinski.
Well, in response to the positions of the mayor and council member Rice, key for me is that it's the responsibility of the applicant to prove the case, and that should really be the focus, that the burden of proof falls on the applicant, and therefore this is not elective. And we are saying to them, if we use the language in the bottom right, we're saying to them, this is our direction of travel, this is the sequence. The first is to build on site. You must bear the burden of proof that that's not possible. And if the judging bodies say, all right, we've been convinced, then we move to Plan B, which is find us an off-site place to put your project. And it's the burden that falls on you as the applicant to demonstrate that it is impossible. I'm thinking that if those two are in place, and that's the focus, that is the burden of proof is on the applicant, then it would be almost impossible to get to the third position, which is in lieu fee, because there's got to be some place in town where something can be built. So I think I will support the motion as made by the mayor and seconded by Councilman Rice. I think it does protect us. I think it does leave within the hands of the deciding bodies the opportunity to make these calls. And so long as we know that the burden is on the applicant and not on town government to prove the case, then I think we have our protections.
Councilmember Spector? No? Vice Mayor McNutt?
May I ask a question of staff?
Absolutely.
In the scenario that Councilmember Rice put forward, where there is some once-in-a-lifetime situation where there's a flatland development of 5 to 9 units, where they really can't build an affordable unit there, is there any alternative, any way of the reviewing body to do an exception or a workaround?
As proposed with these modifications, no.
Okay. I'm thinking.
Okay, we certainly have time to
You have persuaded me on that one.
I do want to, if I may, just point out one thing to council.
Certainly, Mr.
One
Court.
area that we haven't explored, we've never dealt with, and I think from a very practical perspective will be a real challenge, particularly if we start seeing a lot of applications of this sort, is trying to phase projects in a manner that ensures the development of an off-site BMP unit. Normally, you have a developer who comes in with control over a piece of property, and they make their proposal, and they will surely make a proposal that will, if possible, avoid putting the BMP unit on site if they can come in and say, we will put it someplace else. And then it's going to be up to us to try to define a manner that ensures that it's built someplace else consistent with the requirements of the program, because the last thing in the world we want to have happen is to have the proposal go forward and the developer walks away and the BMP unit never gets constructed.
Thank you. And I think, as Mr. Brzezinski said, too, the burden is on the applicant, and that would be a condition of approval, and it would need to be in there. And I understand what you're saying, Mr. Korb. Vice Mayor McNutt, would you like a break? No. Okay. Any further discussion on the current motion before us? Seeing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
That passes 3-2. Yes. Thank you very much. All right, we're now going.
We still have the resolution.
Oh, excuse me. You gave me that list, and I'm just going to move right on down it. All right. I'm going to direct the clerk administrator to publish the notice. Okay, so directed. And we need a motion required to approve the resolution, approving Resolution 2008-121, and approving the revised BMP program guidelines.
So moved.
Motion made.
Second.
Seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Passes 3-2. Thank you. We now move on to item number 8, which is regarding 930 University Avenue, the extra space of Los Gatos. And we're going to have a staff report. I believe, Mr. Paulson, you just popped right up there from wherever you came from. Mr. Paulson, our associate planner, will give the staff report on item number 8.
Just waiting here quickly while the PowerPoint comes up. The existing site is probably fresh in everyone's mind, given the action of the last council meeting with the town's approval of acquiring the site directly to the south of the subject site, the former Verizon property. That property was subdivided in 2006 to create the property that the subject extra space storage is looking to put a facility on, and then had a remainder parcel which Verizon had continued to use that the town is currently in the works to purchase. This is sorry for the poor quality. I did what I could to try to work that up. The site's obviously about a quarter mile south of Lark Avenue, and again, it's adjacent to the site that will be utilized for sports facilities. The applicant's requesting approval of a zone change from CM to CMPD to construct an 86,345 square foot self-storage building that will be 3 stories above grade and contain 1 level below grade. The facility will also contain an on-site caretaker's residence. The proposed project requires 2 exceptions to the zoning code, the first being the front setback exception. They're requesting an exception to allow a front setback of 12 feet 3 inches. The required setback for a building 35 feet tall in this zone would typically be 40 feet. It should be noted that the building will actually be approximately 60 feet from the edge of the current public right-of-way that is currently thickly vegetated. The second exception is for the on-site caretaker's residence. They're hoping to have an on-site caretaker's residence, and currently in the zoning code for conditional uses, residential uses are not permitted in the CM zone. So those 2 exceptions would be required. As this went through Planning Commission staff discussed various topics which are detailed at length in the staff reports and verbatim minutes that were provided to the council. I'm just going to run through this list. However, if anyone has any questions or wants specific information on any of these items, we're prepared to answer those questions. The first was the common design principles of the commercial design guidelines. That's one of the policy documents that the project has to be compatible with. Second is mass and scale and neighborhood compatibility. The architecture, parking, traffic, tree removals that are proposed landscaping, the required grading, and another policy document being the guidelines and standards for land use near streams, which this must comply with. The issue of community benefit was discussed, and obviously the project has to be compatible with the general plan. On June 24th, the Planning Commission reviewed it for the first time. Ultimately ended up continuing the matter with direction to provide additional information regarding the riparian corridor, consider a design without a cellar element, consider a design without a red roof, which subsequently was changed to a different color, and to provide information regarding the justification for the caretaker's unit, and lastly, providing additional information regarding the proposed community benefit and requesting some information on how the commission should evaluate that. The applicant and staff went through that direction and provided additional information and justification, and on August 12th this year, the Planning Commission recommended approval of the proposed project. So the recommendation, which probably isn't as clean or neatly organized as Mr. Corb's apparently was for the last item, but would be on the first and second sheet of the staff report. Ultimately, staff recommends that the council accept the commission's recommendation and approve the proposed plan development ordinance, which would obviously require the following: making the mitigated negative declaration, adopting the mitigation monitoring plan, making the required findings for the zone change, and then ultimately approving the zone change, and having the clerk waive the reading of the ordinance, and have the clerk read the title of the ordinance, and then ultimately introduce the ordinance. However, staff's available if there's any questions or further information is requested, and the applicant is also here and will make their presentation as well.
Thank you, Mr. Paulson. Questions of Mr. Paulson? Councilmember Speck.
Thank you. A couple of questions. First of all, I know that we have a lot of materials. I know there are trees being removed. Is there some document that I can look at and it shows me which trees are being removed? And I'll tell you exactly what I'm looking to. Trees being removed along the University Avenue frontage, and how many of the trees or what proportion are eucalyptus. But mainly I want to see where these removals are occurring, and if it's something in our binder, let me know and maybe I can hunt it down. That's question number one.
Okay, we'll start there. The answer I know off the top of my head is there's 5 proposed trees in the public right-of-way along University that are proposed to be removed. Should be noted that they're not necessary for the construction of the proposed project, and I think the applicant has stated previously at the commission that if necessary, they're willing to keep those trees. However, when the consulting arborist reviewed it, I believe at least one of those is a eucalyptus, and it was in hazardous condition and recommended that it be removed, and that the removal of the other 3 ordinance-sized trees and 1 fruit tree that's not ordinance-sized could also provide benefit to the existing oaks there that might help with the longevity. In terms of an exhibit showing exactly where those are, it's probably L1, which is Exhibit B of the ordinance in...
You have a tab?
624.
The folded all the way at the back, this group here.
The big group of plans.
L1. Keep going all the way back. Far back. Keep going. There. And it's next to it's about 5 from the back.
All right, I'll hunt that down. That's L1.
So there's 2, tree 51 and 52 are 1 red box, which is common name, and that's a eucalyptus species, and then another eucalyptus species is 52. Tree 47 is a black walnut. Sorry, well, I got a little loud there. Black walnut, which is not of ordinance size, so it doesn't require tree removal permit, but that's another one that's being proposed. And the other 2 are tree 36 and tree 30, which are both ash species.
Mr. Paulson, with regard to the ones that are being removed from the right-of-way that you just described, putting aside the eucalyptus, why are the removal is not necessitated by the construction, why are the other 4 being removed?
The walnut is proposed to be removed because it's not a protected tree. I'll also, as we're going through conversation here, try to dig out the arborist report and see if there's more specific information regarding the removal of those trees.
Okay. And then one other question, if I might.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor. There was discussion at the Planning Commission level on community benefit, and I'm a big fan of LED lights, and I like having lights in the trees downtown. But was any thought given at the staff level to some kind of community benefit that dealt with, we know that University and Lark is I think it's level F, but it's a very difficult intersection in which to turn left. Was any thought given to a community benefit that either dealt with University Lark or dealt with the fact that we're now going to have 2 pieces of property exiting onto University and coming off of University? Something having to do with that condition.
Well, there's a couple things. One is the traffic engineer and consultant go through signal warrants. Unfortunately, I don't believe Kevin's here any longer, but it didn't trigger a signal at that intersection. However, there was a recommendation that they pay a proportionate share of potential future improvements to that intersection and or the intersection at University Lark and Winchester, and that is currently, as I understand it, in the planning process for those improvements. But to answer your question, no, staff did not pursue that avenue.
Thank you. Mr. Paulson, just to follow up on Councilmember Spector's question, in the staff report on page 10, third paragraph, it talks about the 63 trees on the site and goes on, and then towards the middle it says, however, the remaining 10 oaks, and numbers those, are located within the University Avenue right-of-way and do not appear to conflict with project development. Therefore, removal of these 10 oaks would be a significant impact. Are those 10 oaks being removed or not being, or proposed to be removed or not being removed?
They will not be proposed to be removed. When that was evaluated, they were initially proposing to remove those. That's no longer the case.
Super. Thank you very much. Councilmember Brzezinski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And follow up to Councilwoman Spector's comments about community benefit. There were 2 numbers generated in relationship to the LED lights on East Main. One was a projection, I believe, of the applicant of 30 to 35,000, something like that, or maybe even higher, and then an estimate of about 25,000 for the actual installation, given what we know those would cost us. That range of price, is that applicable to the traffic impacts when it comes to, let's say, moving that to a different site? For example, something more proximate to the location, i.e. the Lark, Winchester, Lark, University intersections, or that entrance egress from the property itself. What's the applicability of the dollar figure that was projected for the LED versus community benefit that might be more in our interest to relate to the traffic impacts in that area?
If I may, they are already paying a traffic impact fee consistent with our policy based on the mitigation required for the traffic produced by the project. So anything above and beyond that is not required. It's not related to any mitigations that are necessary for the project. They are offering the LEDs as a community benefit, separate and apart from any traffic or any other related impacts. They are required to cover the impacts, and they are doing so based on our policies. And so there's nothing else that is required for traffic impacts.
And that's a set fee that's already
correct
accounted for. I guess I would like to know what that fee is then, since I didn't see it in the document.
Mr. Paulson is busy looking at the
Yes.
arborist report. It's a $18,000 traffic impact fee is what's required for the project. Community benefit is obviously beyond that is required for the PD.
In addition to that, the recommendation from the traffic consultant is that the applicant shall contribute to the town's future capital improvement project of installing a signal at the Lark Avenue University Avenue intersection for its incremental share of impact. I don't have a cost for that fee. That will be worked up by Parks and Public Works should this project go forward.
Okay, but there is an equivalency, or there's some kind of ratio that belongs to them as a result of the number of trips that they generate.
Right. There is a formula that will be applied by the Parks and Public Works Department to determine what their pro rata share of any of the impact of their project towards any permanent improvement in the intersection, what that would be. But that would cover, that along with the impact fee would cover their mitigation requirement for traffic.
All right, so then if I might conclude.
Yes.
So then the community benefit as proposed is separate and above anything that is required because of the traffic impacts. And then it is to our dialogue to determine what would be an appropriate community benefit that they might be willing, apparently it's a willingness then, might be willing to contribute without obligation at this point. Is that correct?
Yes, the community benefit is an offering by the applicant of something above and beyond what would be required otherwise by the proposed project impacts.
Thank you.
Thank you. And to follow up, Mr. Larson, the traffic impact fee is required, and what was the second fee that is required that was a response to one of Mr. Brzezinski's inquiries?
The second fee, we don't have a dollar number of.
What's it called?
It's a traffic and transportation mitigation. It's a mitigation measure of the environmental review, and that is performance standard number 34 in the tab of the June 24th under the plan development ordinance.
And that is different than the traffic impact fee?
The traffic analysis identified two fees that the applicant is required to pay upon approval of the project through the process. One is the $18,000 commercial traffic impact fee. The other is a yet undetermined amount, but it would be their proportional share for improvements to Larkin University.
And that's called
separate from all of that is the community benefit of which the applicant
And the second
is
one's
offered.
called the traffic and transportation mitigation fee. Thank you. I'm good. Council, any other questions? That's it of staff. The applicant, Mr. Korb, 10 minutes?
That's correct.
Okay.
Or less if you can get it done in less than 10 minutes.
Exactly.
My name is Scott Wyckoff. I am here representing Extra Space Storage, the applicant, and we really appreciate this opportunity to present to the town council. Also with me today is Richard Tanner from Extra Space Storage. Craig Mann is our project architect, and Ken Price has worked with us as well in the riparian setback corridor study. So they're available for questions as well. If I can briefly just take a minute. First of all, I appreciate the Scouts. My son just got his Eagle Scout approved, by the way, so I'm excited about that. And I'm an Eagle Scout and the Scout Committee chairman. So anyway, I'm sorry they left because I wanted to congratulate them for being here. If I can briefly just say, we're proposing a new storage facility as discussed. Extra Space Storage is a real estate investment trust that owns and operates over 700 self-storage facilities. We are very proud of this facility and excited to be here. Back in September of 2007, we met with the Conceptual Development Advisory Committee and had a couple of subsequent meetings that kind of crafted somewhat the design of our project. We're really excited to build something that has this 360-degree architecture and looks like it does. If we can, we have a video display that kind of shows a drive-by of what this project will look like. And we did two displays, kind of like we did with your exhibits. The trees are as the project is proposed. Without the trees is just to kind of expose what the architecture looks like.
Mr. Wyckoff, if that microphone is removable.
Okay.
Okay, why don't you pull it out because you're going to want to turn and look and then we won't be able to hear you.
Okay.
There you go.
So as this rolls through, this is just going to be driving by on University Avenue, and this is modeling the existing trees and what the project will look like. So you can kind of get a feel for what the buffer will be like with the trees that are existing and proposed. And this is coming south, I believe, from Lark Avenue towards the dam. Then there's one more that just shows if you were to pull into the property. The office is actually on what would be the second floor of the property when you pull in. And you can see that. Okay, that's probably good on that one there. What we're requesting is a zone change from a controlled manufacturing to controlled manufacturing PD. The reason that we did this is because staff made a recommendation to us that any projects over 40,000 square feet, they recommended that we do a PD. And so that's why we're requesting that zone change. The caretaker's unit is something that we consider an amenity in our industry and our business. Our customers consider it an amenity as well. Having a manager generally or someone on site and living on site, there's a sense of security, a pride of ownership, and other existing facilities in the community of Los Gatos have that as an amenity. So it gives us puts us on an equal playing field as far as a competitive advantage with our customers. Another kind of a significant issue is the setback requirement, and I have an exhibit I'd like to put on the overhead if I can to display this. I don't know what the best way is to. Our property is kind of unusual. I know you've all been there. With the steep hill, our property sits approximately 15 feet below University Avenue. And another unusual characteristic of this property is also that the public right-of-way is much further. You can see from the center line of University Avenue to our property line is 65 feet. And let's see if I can slide this up. See this way. Oh boy. Sorry guys. Okay, you can see over here, generally the rest of the way down University Avenue on the other side of the street, you can see it's 33 feet and 29 feet. So it's approximately 30 feet from the center line to the property line of our neighbors. Ours is unique in that we're about 65 feet to our property line. So we're requesting a reduction in the setback to 12 feet. But the reality is our property will still be, and as you can see, I don't know if I can back that up, but you can see we're comparable to the existing properties on the street as far as our setback. And we're buffered well with the trees, and there's just a significant amount of public right-of-way that's in that opening. Okay, the next issue is the trees, and I do have a color exhibit. If I can, is it okay to bring it up here to hand it here? Okay.
Hand to the clerk, please.
And I have one I can put on the overhead here as well. We can do this. I don't know if you can help me. Let me back that up. Okay. Oh, thank you. Okay, this is a eucalyptus tree. This is University Avenue, that public right-of-way between where the trees we're proposing. These are the two ash trees. These are the two eucalyptus trees, and I'm not sure where the walnut tree is. I think it's under these right here somewhere. This eucalyptus tree, according to the arborist report, is sick and dead and is a hazard, so he wants us to remove that tree as part of our project, which we're willing to do. These trees, I'm not exactly sure why we're proposing those. I don't know if there's something negative about an ash tree or not. That's not my area of expertise. But what we're proposing in this area, we're willing to leave any trees that you would like us to leave. We just agreed to follow the town's arborist review report and to leave whatever trees they recommend and to remove the ones that they recommend that we remove. And so I think part of that is the quality and condition of the trees that are there, as well as their ability to impede the growth of existing oak trees or more desirable species of trees that we have there. These other trees, for example, these two trees are not on our property. I've met with that owner to talk briefly with him. These are eucalyptus trees that when we do the curb down the side, we can construct it in a way that does not impact those roots and leave those trees. But members of the Planning Commission and others have asked that they thought it would be a good idea to remove those eucalyptus trees, and so we're willing to do that as well as part of our project with the cooperation of our neighboring property owner. These trees as well here need to be removed to facilitate the project. A lot of these are big pine trees that the arborist said are a hazard as they're currently in place because of the size of the limbs that have to be pruned, or something would have to be done to make them safer, in a safer condition. So this is the situation with the trees and our willingness to leave the trees in this location, as well as replanting some, which this represents. Some of the trees we'll be replanting as well. The other question that came up in the, well, let me address community benefit if I can. One reason that we're excited about this project is self-storage projects generally do not have as significant of impact as a lot of other projects do. I have a PowerPoint we're going to show in a minute that it'll show some of the neighbors and our compatibility with the neighborhood, some of their use. You can see some of the parking requirements for some of those other facilities. But we really do have a low amount of parking, low amount of vehicle trips. And even with the traffic study, we actually have fewer trips, we feel, than the engineers modeled. We understand we're going to pay the impacts of what was modeled in the traffic study. But our storage facilities really have very low vehicle traffic rates. And so, forgot my point here. Oh, with the community benefit. You know, in discussion with staff, Extra Space is really big on energy efficiency. We're retrofitting a lot of our existing facilities with new light fixtures, light bulbs. That's why when we saw the LED lights on the trees, that was something consistent with the Extra Clean, Extra Green program that we're currently implementing in our facilities. But we are flexible and willing to use a proportionate amount of money that we have proposed there for another benefit that you may feel is more desirable for us to use. So whether that's relative to the soccer fields, whether it's additional money to be put towards the intersection improvements, that's something that we're willing to do, like I said, as long as it's proportionate to what we've currently proposed. So we're flexible there, and you know the needs of the community better than we do, so we're willing to participate in that way. The next issue was the mass and scale of the building. And again, with the slideshow, we'll show some compatibility. The above ground square footage is actually the third largest building on University Avenue. It's not the largest. When you add the cellar element, it does become, to 82,000 square feet. The size of the facility is operationally and economically sustainable for our product type. The building is also compliant with the town policies in this zone in lot coverage ratios and also in the height restrictions. Another thing about self-storage construction is, unlike retail or commercial construction, self-storage construction has a lower ceiling height. So a 3-story self-storage building will actually be lower than a retail building because we don't require a lot of the ductwork and a lot of the other things that an office or retail building may require. This is a single-purpose building. It's built on 10-foot-on centers. A question came up about converting it at some future point to another use and having an extremely large building there. This building is built on 10-foot centers, is how it's structurally built. And so you could have no room larger than 10 by 10 without pillars or columns throughout. And also, it would not meet the parking or other requirements that are involved. The existing topography of the site buffers this building extremely well. I think you just saw that drive-by. You really only see about a little more than 1 story, maybe 1.5 stories from University Avenue. It's also buffered extremely well from the trail on Los Gatos Creek. And I've walked that a couple times just to look and see if we can see any of the story poles, and really you can't. There might be patches where you might see colors and things there. So we feel like this is a building that meets the needs of the community. It's going to be, with the 360-degree architecture, it's going to be an extremely attractive building. We feel like it's going to fit in well with its neighbors.
Thank you, Mr. Wyckoff. Your time is up there. There may be some questions of council. Okay. I'll certainly start off by disclosing that you and I had a lengthy telephone conversation on September 23rd regarding your project. Council, questions? Vice Mayor McNutt?
Thank you. I'll also disclose that I met with the applicant and visited the site. My question was, have you thought through construction staging, and will you be able to do all of your staging on your site, or are you going to have to look for extra parking on University or neighboring spots, or how are you going to do that?
I feel like we actually have a little of a luxury on this site to have a little extra room, so I feel like we can handle the construction staging on site. So I don't think we're going to require any additional agreements with neighboring property owners or additional parking requirements.
Mr. Brzezinski.
First, to disclose, we also had a conversation, visited the site numerous times. I'd like to raise the issue with you of the community benefit that was previously introduced into the conversation. I understand your rationale for the LED lights on Main Street, given going green as your company is focused. But you would be amenable to offering that same amount for something that might be attached to your new neighboring property. That would be the town's recreation park. I'm looking at I guess, a general commitment to assist us with needs on that site. One need comes to my mind is the signalization, the potential signalization of the entrance point to your property, wherein that would certainly be a benefit to the community, because of the fact that there will be some traffic generated, usually within a short period of time, but intensely within a short period of time, every time we're beginning or concluding one of our recreational activities. And would the organization be amenable to lateraling those funds, whatever they would be determined, from the LAD to something such as a signalization project, if that were something we would request?
Yeah, my understanding is that's okay as far as the community benefit policy is, and we would be willing to. I mean, we'd love to buy a scoreboard or something over there for the facility, or help, or leave it up to the discretion of the decision makers in the development of that community site.
Okay, if I
Yes,
might.
that is acceptable for either the traffic control measures at the driveway or whatever purpose was deemed the most
All right.
appropriate or necessary.
Then I'd like to direct the question to staff at this point. Then.
Yes, sir.
So with that in mind, Mr. Manager and Mr. Paulson, at what stage would we have to determine what that specific use would be? Because tonight, there may be a variety of options that we would look at, and I doubt if we would want to come to conclusion or could come to conclusion tonight on this, because we haven't even evaluated what our needs are. So what's the specificity that we have to get to on this?
I would recommend, Mayor and Council and Councilman Przinski, that condition number 6 on page 3 of 17 be expanded to reflect the offering of the applicant, but to provide an alternative at the town's discretion for the receipt of an equivalent value, or choose a number based on the applicant's presentation, to be applied to traffic, site, or other improvements for adjacent public facilities.
Okay, so could we write language or reflect language of that, so that if we come to the point where we can actually make an approval tonight, that we do not have to return? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Przinski. Okay, you can have a seat, Mr. Wyckoff, and we'll now open up to the public, and we have a card from Citizen Ray regarding agenda item number 8.
Well, thank you, Mr. Przinski, for bringing up the issue of neighborhood compatibility. The fact the town has just last week or so agreed to buy the next door property. I mean, I was waiting for somebody to bring that up, and you finally did it. Hooray! All right. And the question I'm going to ask is the setback enough from this huge 86,000 square foot building, 3-story building? Is the setback enough on the side adjacent to the kids' sports area? Okay, I'm not sure that it is. So I want some discussion from somebody from that group about that. Okay. Also, I mean for the kids. Also, you need to know that the first hearing of the Planning Commission, traffic studies were submitted and discussed by the employee, this Rooney woman, okay? At the second hearing, the traffic studies were all eliminated. Not a word in the evaluation of the project about the 200 trips per day that the engineering firm that was hired by Los Gatos has considered to be an appropriate amount to be brought in by this huge structure. 200 new car trips per day. That thing is so big, they're not going to serve Los Gatos. They're going to serve the whole of the South Bay. You know? Bucks. Wonderful. Is it or is it not the prostitution of Los Gatos? The dollar bill. Okay? Car trips on top of everything. Every time there's a new project, it gets approved. More traffic. And nobody on the town council except Barbara Spector seems to give a damn about the future of Los Gatos and what you five are doing to the town by approving everything that comes down the pike without a thought about the future and the traffic, unbelievable traffic that's going to be created by your incremental prostitution of the town. And I repeat, prostitution. Lastly, I cannot believe that this Rooney woman dropped out the 200, the traffic report. I can't believe it. It's not even in your staff report. You don't know a thing about it.
You know the drill. Having no other cards, I'll close the public portion.
Can I finish?
No, you have.
Oh, that's $100.
Fine. Thank you.
$100 for anybody that's going to run against this guy.
I hope. No, never mind. Okay. Thank you very much.
That's a warning.
Okay. Mr. Larson? We've closed the public hearing portion, and I'll turn to you before we turn to council discussion.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council.
Yes. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Larson.
Did just want to respond to one comment. The inaccurate allegation against Ms. Rooney had been raised to me previously. The Planning Commission, upon its first hearing, did not send back to staff any further consideration of the traffic analysis. They viewed that work was complete at the first hearing. All staff returned to at the second hearing with the Planning Commission were the issues on the table from the Planning Commission continuance. However, in the council's report, you have both the first and second staff reports to the Planning Commission, including the full traffic analysis.
Thank you very much. Mr. Wyckoff, you have up to 5 minutes for any closing arguments, and then if you'll remain there, if any questions that might be asked to you.
If I can, a couple other points on the setback issue. One is that I neglected to mention was that the setback also allows us to be further away from the creek and still remain consistent with the buildings. And the other thing it does is it allows the access to the current Verizon property to be more easily accessible, because that's where that access is on the creek side of our property as well. If we can turn on, I have just a PowerPoint slideshow. Do I need to do this? And the reason we did this, we just try to take pictures of existing buildings, show compatibility with our architecture, so we're conformity with the neighborhood, kind of how our, oh, is that it? Okay. Going the wrong way. Huh?
There you go.
Okay. These are ones you've already seen, so I'll try to. Okay, if you can just go through these ones.
You might want to keep talking. There you go.
All right, keep going. Okay, this is at Larkin University. I had an example of the architecture. Some of the, oh, hold on, yeah. All right, and Larkin University Avenue, the intersection we're talking about, but also shows kind of the existing type of architecture and construction materials. Okay. And this is directly across the street. You can see kind of the setback, how close this building is to the road there. That's an existing structure on the other side of the street from our property. Their parking is actually behind the building, similar to what we're proposing. This is the property next to us, and I took this picture just to show the impact of a compatible use in the same zone, but what the parking requirements are. Our parking requires 14 spaces. I think when they did their survey, they only found 5 or 6 cars at any one time in our space. I've never seen more than 4 or 5, and any ones I've visited as well. But this is just an example of what kind of parking and vehicles, you know, maybe a different type of industrial use might create. Again, the neighboring property. Okay, just to show the multi-story buildings and their proximity to the road. This is our direct neighbor next to us. And this building, looking at it from University Avenue, our best estimation is that it's pretty close to that 35-foot height restriction as well for this zone. And we have another picture that kind of shows it from our property as well to show kind of the height. Okay, this is the Verizon building right next to our property. And this is looking at the story poles from what would be the sports field to give you kind of a perspective. And then you can kind of see where the road is and how high those trees are there as well from above the top of our building to kind of give you a perspective how well it's really going to be buffered from University Avenue. Okay, this is from our property. We're actually 5 or 6 feet lower than the property next to us. University Avenue would be where the cars are on this side, the white car. And that, our best estimate is that's pretty close to 35 feet there on that height of that building. This is the building directly across the street, and it's a large 2-story building. You can see what I'm talking about. Our stories are 10 feet high, but you can see how the top of those windows, there's probably another 8 or 9 feet on top of that, which is screening, heating and air conditioning, and just for higher ceilings in an office type professional use. And that also sits up kind of a hill where we're down in a hole on the other side of University Avenue. This is our property looking from across the street, and it's really hard to tell, but you can kind of see a little bit where our story pole, some of that orange is in there. But that's about where the height of our building is relative, and here's a neighboring building to us. So we're somewhere right in here as you look across the street at our property. And this is the same thing. You can actually see the orange right here a little bit better to see that height in the corner. That would be the corner of the building. And that's, again, look, that's where I was standing to take the picture. Okay, these are buildings further down University Avenue. And I took these because these are actually 3-story buildings, similar. I think ours are actually going to sit a lot lower. Again, you can see how high the floors are on these. Like, see how there's so much roof on top of this, above that floor to show you. Okay, if you want to flip the next. Keep going one more. Okay, this just shows that this is a 3-story building in the back as well. And just kind of to give you a perspective, I don't know what the height of this building is or what the zone requirement is there. If you hit one more, I think there's one more of that. And again, to show. We just want to show you that along University Avenue, we're an infill project. We're on undisturbed ground. We're not going to disturb. This is an existing parking lot that's already been graded and improved. And we're really excited to have this opportunity after 2 years of working with your staff and with the consultants to present this to you to get your vote.
Thank you, Mr. Wyckoff. Are you done with your presentation?
Yes, sir.
Okay, if you could remain there, please, for questions from council, and I'll start one. Your thoughts regarding your proposed project and its resultant FAR as compared to the neighborhood compatibility, page 6 of the staff report.
Okay. I think the floor area ratio that you're discussing, ours does have a higher floor area ratio than our neighboring properties do. And I think the main primary reason for that is because of the parking requirements that those other uses have. From the slide that I showed, you could see the number of parking spots that a building of the size next to our property is, the number of parking spots that were required. And so they had no choice but to limit the size of their building, and the floor area ratio kind of demonstrates that. So I think the low impact of our project is one reason why we have a higher floor area ratio. We have less parking requirements, a less intensive use, less vehicle trips, and so less of an impact overall on our neighbors and in the community. Also, when we came in to do our analysis, we do very thorough analysis before we buy a property. We have a 3-mile trade area that we really look at. We have additional facilities. We just opened one in Santa Clara, and we have additional facilities in Campbell and other neighboring communities. So this really is a local facility that we're going to use. But we looked at the building coverage ratio and the building coverage ratio and the height restriction, because that's what we understood the ordinances to be. So when we did our modeling and pro forma from our financial analysis, we looked at what is currently acceptable and consistent with the policies of the town regarding this current zoning, and that's how we modeled and came up with the size of our project. That's how we determined it was feasible to proceed with the purchase and acquisition of the property.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Paulson, a question of you, please. In relation to the question I just posed of Mr. Wyckoff regarding the FAR, I understand in the CM zone, the building coverage that he just referred to permits maximum of 50% coverage, and the proposed project comes in at 38, almost 39%, 38.6. There is not a maximum FAR in the CM zone. One concern I have with the FAR that comes out over 1%, precedent setting, massiveness, etc. Was there any discussion along the way beyond what we've been given? Any thoughts you could share at all regarding the FAR issue?
Well, excuse me. Obviously, the sheer numbers of this proposed project, we're concerned that staff talked with the applicant at length about trying to keep them informed that, mass and scale and size would be a concern. We laid that information out for the Planning Commission's review. We provided information to the Commission outlining why we felt in this particular circumstance that this proposed FAR height, mass, and scale was appropriate given the site characteristics, with it being in a bowl, limited visibility from University Avenue. So mass and scale and FAR, although, as you noted, is not a requirement of the zone, those are all issues that get weaved into our conversations relating to neighborhood compatibility. So yes, that has been discussed.
Thank you, Mr. Paulson. Mr. Korb, a question for you, and then I'm going to turn over to council for questions. Mr. Wyckoff, like I said, if you can just remain there, please, because I'm sure there'll be questions of you. Mr. Korb, if this building is approved and the FAR as it is 1.1 and it meets the parking requirements, somewhere down the road, for whatever reason, the extra space storage decides to move out, what sort of limitations would be in place, given the PD, of the new business coming in and the very, very, very limited parking that's in the plans, given the 60,000 above, 80,000 total square footage that's involved?
When you put a PD approval on a property, what you've essentially done is create an alternative land use zone for that particular property. You can use either the underlying zoning, the base zoning, or the PD. Once they do one, they're stuck with it. So the limitations are, in fact, the uses allowed by the PD. The PD allows the storage use, which is exceptional for the site, and the caretaker unit, which is exceptional to the site. Other than that, I think it incorporates other base zoning uses that are otherwise permitted.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure whatever we had in the PD, as far as the definition, didn't allow something else that would generate 2-3 times the amount of traffic, cars, parking, et cetera, and we're stuck.
No, it does not. It would not.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Wyckoff, you understand that what Mr. Korb just said as far as the PD applies to your use, and it in fact limits, should you ever change your mind,
Correct.
As far as who could purchase your property for what use and use your existing building. I know you spoke about the 10 by 10 on centers and the 100 square foot rooms and all the rest, but at the end of the day, should this project get approved, one of the reasons it is, as you pointed out, is the very, very minimum parking requirements that you have. Any other person coming in, a real estate office, whatever, couldn't acquire your property and use it for that purpose, and you understand that?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
And Mr. I went back and looked at the PD language. It is extremely specific. It allows a storage use with a caretaker unit, period. That's all that's allowed. Anybody who wants to come in and apply, or a subsequent user would have to seek an amendment to the PD in order to change the use.
Okay, and I can't predict how future councils would rule, but an amendment given that far, given that square footage, giving those parking spaces, would really, really limit your saleability down the road. And that's something you fully understand as far as deed restrictions, PD, whatever.
Yeah, we've made a commitment to the storage industry. We've been in the storage industry for 30 years. And at one time, buildings were built so they could be converted into other uses. But we've made that commitment with the type of construction we're doing, the building, and you'd have to tear down the building and redo something new there if you were frankly going to do something different.
Yeah, because if this is approved, it's approved as a storage unit, period.
Correct.
All right. Council, questions of the applicant? None. You may be seated. Thank you very much. That closes the public hearing portion of item number 8. You're welcome. Now I'll look to council for a discussion and a motion or questions of staff. Staff has a question of council. Mr. Paulson, that's turning the tables on us.
If I might just get back to Councilwoman Spector's previous question about the other 3 non-eucalyptus in the right-of-way.
Thank you.
The 2 ashes, the first one on a rating of 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest, 5 being the best. Tree 30 had a health rating of 1 and a structure rating of 3. On the second ash, which is tree 36. It had a health score of 2 and a structure of 3, but it also had codominant leaders with included bark.
Ah.
So
codominant leaders. All right, let's keep this simple.
And number 47, tree 47, which is the walnut, received a health score of 2 and a structure score of 3. Now, again, as the applicant also stated, these aren't necessary for removal if the council, should this move forward, determines that they would like those trees to remain, then that is always an option.
Thank you. And no codominant leaders present in the final tree? All right.
Just the one.
Thank you for answering that question and research. Appreciate it. Council, discussion, motion, Councilmember Brzezinski.
I think I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, go for it.
I will move to make the mitigated negative declaration as exhibited as attachment 1.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Let's have some discussion. Councilmember Rice.
No discussion to the motion, but just since I hadn't had a chance to disclose, I did meet with Mr. Wyckoff, and I have visited the site several times, and I'll be supporting the motion.
Councilmember Spector.
Ditto.
Ditto. And I'll add in that I also visited the site several times besides the conversation that I had. Mr. Larson, did I see your finger up? You had a question or no? No. Okay, we have a motion on the floor. We have a second. And Vice Mayor McNutt, anything to add in?
No.
Nope. I'm going to call for the question then. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Congratulations. Welcome to the community.
No.
No, there are a few more
Not
things.
yet, though. Not quite yet. We have things to do.
I'm just going to follow the directions here. Mr. Mayor?
Yes,
If-
Mr.
if I might.
Brzezinski, please.
I'm also going to move to adopt the mitigation monitoring plan, and that is indicated as Exhibit 15 of Attachment 2 in our packet.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? None. I'll call for the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Go ahead, Mr.
Can I
Brzezinski.
continue? All right. I'm going to do something a little different than the order as presented in our packet. I'm going to move to waive the reading of the zone change ordinance. And that does require
a motion.
A vote, yes.
Motion made. Need a second.
Second.
Have a second. Vice Mayor McNutt. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. That passed unanimously. All righty.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, if you'd like to direct.
I'm going, thank you, I will. No motions required for this. Thank you, Mr. Brzezinski. I'll direct the clerk to read the title of the zone change ordinance. So directed? Go for it.
Ordinance of the Town of Los Gatos amending the town code affecting a zone change from CM to CMPD for property at 930 University Avenue.
Thank you, Mrs. Rose. And Mr. Brzezinski, you're on a roll.
All right, and now I believe it's appropriate to make the zone change at this time. So that's Exhibit 2 of Attachment 2, and to approve the application subject to the conditions included in the Plan Development Ordinance. And I would like to amend the language as stated on page 3 of 17.
That's condition number 6?
Correct.
Okay.
And if I might ask the staff, we had discussed earlier, there was language that would be appropriate to give more flexibility to the community benefit. Could you reiterate perhaps language that might be appropriate for
And
that?
Mr. Larson, that had to do with, as a potential alternative at the town's discretion.
Correct. The language staff would propose adding to Condition 6, Exhibit 18 of Attachment 2 would be next to last sentence of that paragraph. Alternately, at the discretion of the town, the applicant will provide $40,000 for on-site or off-site access or other improvements for the proposed adjacent public recreation facility as determined by the town. The $40,000 figure came from the applicant's citation at the first Planning Commission meeting of the estimated value of the community benefit they had proposed, which was accepted by Chair O'Donnell in his comments immediately following.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. Mr. Brzezinski, is that sufficient wording for you?
That is very appropriate wording for me.
Thank you. We have a motion. I'm looking for a second.
Second.
Second, Vice Mayor McNutt. Any discussion regarding the motion before us? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. That passes unanimously.
So then I will move to
introduce
the ordinance to effectuate the zone change.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to introduce the ordinance to effectuate the zone change. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? None. Passes unanimously. I'm now going to refer to the town attorney for preparation of the appropriate resolution. So referred?
Yes, it is, and we will be bringing back a staff report with the ordinance for final adoption, most likely at the next council meeting.
Thank you, and I have two more things to say. First of all, I'm assuming it was Mr. Korb that I have to thank for the step-by-step in the staff report?
No, you have to thank Mr. Brzezinski, who made all the necessary motions.
No, he read what's there. Who wrote them?
Oh, I didn't write them on this report. No,
Mr. Larson? Mr. Paulson?
Exceptional staff of community development wrote the recommendations on both the last two items.
Exceptional staff of community development. In my 7 years, that is the best written directions ever. And I was so stunned I didn't even look for them. So thank you very, very much. I have learned my lesson. Please continue doing that from here on out. That's absolutely wonderful, wonderful. I appreciate that. Number two, Mr. Wyckoff and company, welcome to the community. And we look forward to your participation and partnership with the proposed sports facility afterwards, and hope your venture is a success. And look forward to the quality architecture, quality administration, management, and being good neighbors. Thank you very much. All right, you're welcome. Thank you. Okay. Now, we're going to go to item number 8. We have a little change up here, but before I talk any more about it, 9. I won't even say that. Number 9, I'd like to offer Vice Mayor McNutt and Councilmember Rice to make a statement.
Thank you, Mayor. I do own property within 500 feet of this project area, so I'll be recusing.
Thank you. Councilmember Rice.
And like the Vice Mayor, I also own property within 500 feet of the subject property, so I will be recusing myself as well.
Thank you both very much. And we wish you a good night. All righty. And before we turn to Sandy Bailey, Mr. Korb, just so I cross all the T's and dot all the I's, it is a public meeting. I don't have any cards on this item, and I understand the applicant has asked it to be remanded back to the Planning Commission. So it's my intention, and please correct me if I'm wrong, to allow a brief presentation from Sandy. At that point, to offer the public any opportunity to speak, the applicant or anyone else regarding this item, and then go through our procedure and look for council motion, whatever they wish to do. Should it be remanding it back as the applicant wishes, or whatever? Is that correct?
It is correct.
Thank you, sir. Sandy, please take it away.
Thank you, Mayor Wasserman and members of the council. The subject lot is 20,271 square feet and is elevated above the street level of Alpine Avenue and Jackson Street. The lot is challenging to develop due to the steep slope of the lot, which averages about 37%, and due to the numerous trees on the lot and the creek. The subject property is the remaining undeveloped lot of a 3-lot subdivision which was approved in 1991. The applicant is requesting approval to construct a 2,500 square foot multi-level residence with a 1,382 square foot cellar and attached 740 square foot garage. The plans were reviewed by the town's consulting architect, geotech arborist, an initial study and a mitigated negative declaration were prepared. The matter was considered by the Planning Commission on May 27, 2009, and was continued with the direction that the applicant reduce the mass of the right elevation and to reduce the height of the auto court retaining wall. The applicant revised the plans to reduce the height of the auto court wall, but did not change the plans to reduce the mass of the right elevation. The Planning Commission denied the application on August 12, 2009, since the mass of the house was not reduced and the applicant did not provide substantial evidence to support the design that they were proposing. The applicant has appealed this decision. Subsequent to the appeal, staff is happy to report that the applicant has requested that the matter be remanded to the Planning Commission so that they may work with staff and the Commission to obtain approval. Staff supports the request for the remand. And that concludes staff's presentation, and I'm available if you have any questions.
Thank you, and that was an absolutely wonderful staff report. We'll start with Councilmember Spector.
Thank you. Questions of staff. If the council were to go forward and send this back to the Planning Commission, would it be by virtue of the request that we received in a vacuum, or would it be because we have new information, and when we have new information, our policy is to remand things back to the Planning Commission?
Well, it's ultimately for council to decide, but I believe it would be appropriate, given the new information regarding the appeal, that the applicant would like the opportunity to revise the project in an effort to obtain Planning Commission approval. That is new information, and that would be a basis to reverse the decision and remand the application.
Nope, no other questions. Okay, so we'll now look to the public to speak on item number 9.
I would suggest you call the applicant. He is in the audience if he wishes to address the
Certainly, thank
council.
You. Hello there, sir. Come on up. Please identify yourself and give an address. And you have actually up to 10 minutes if you feel the need to speak for 10 minutes.
All right. My name is Barry Barnes. I live at 115 Milk Court, Los Gatos, California. I've been working with staff for about 5 years on this project. I've been to Planning Commission twice. I think we've got it down to one item now, and I've met with a few people in the past 3 weeks, and I think that going back to staff, we should be able to address that one item and take care of it.
Wonderful, thank you. Is that the conclusion of your presentation?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Council, any questions? Seeing none, you may be seated, sir. In fact, hold on just a minute. You'll love this part. Anyone from the public wish to speak? No? Now we go back to the appellant. And would you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I think that's it.
Thank you very much. That closed the public portion of the presentation of the agenda item. Council, looking for a motion. I see a hand waved. Councilmember Spector. Raised. You weren't waving.
Raised. I wasn't waving.
No, waved.
This time of night, I can't move my arm that much. Anyway.
You know, it's 9:45. It's like the longest meeting of the year.
Okay, I'm going to move that the Planning Commission's decision should be modified relative to the appeal and return this item back to the Planning Commission. We have received new information. It is our policy as a council, if we receive new information, to return matters back to the Planning Commission. And the new information that we have received is contained in the applicant's testimony and also in attachment 13 provided to us as a desk item.
Second.
Motion made. I'm looking for a second.
Second.
I see a second.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Brzezinski. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passed unanimously. Thank you very much.
And as previously indicated regarding the past application, I will be returning to council at the next meeting with a resolution finalizing council's decision to remand the application back to the Planning Commission.
Thank you all. Good evening and good night. We're adjourned.